Japan is a world leader in disaster preparedness, but there was very little it could do when faced with a triple disaster 10 years ago. The strongest earthquake in Japan's recorded history brought a tsunami and in turn caused the nuclear reactor meltdown. Fukushima is one of 3 Japanese prefectures hit the hardest. To this day, residents are still trying to come to terms with the severity of the damage brought by the triple disaster. The clocks remember when it happened. This timepiece stopped at 2:47 p.m., the time the magnitude 9 quake struck, causing power outage in many areas. These 2 objects captured the moment when the tsunami washed over. A toppled postbox and a crushed sign. There were many objects you can't tell what they were unless you checked for explanations. On display at this exhibition, titled 10 Years Since, are debris picked up from areas hit by the 2011 triple disaster.
その10年っていうとどうも世の中で復興したねとかもうそろそろもう終わったんじゃないのかっていうような空気といいますかその雰囲気を感じることが増えてきたように私自身思っているんです。
It's the biggest exhibition that this museum in Aizu Wakamatsu City has ever held. これがちょっと夢って書いてあるのが、はい。Among the items being shown is this colorful banner known as the Dream Poster. On it are messages written by children who were forced to leave their homes behind because of the disaster. The majority of them wrote, "I want to return home. I want to play with friends." In the aftermath of the triple disaster, the local government of Aizu Wakamatsu took in thousands of people from Okuma, a town near the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. The exhibition also seeks to acknowledge the local task force participating in the evacuation efforts. When the evacuees from Okuma first arrived, efforts were made to help them adapt to life in Aizu. These handouts were created by locals to teach them how to shovel the snow. The exhibition was put together by some 20 curators from the museum. They traveled to disaster areas across Fukushima to collect not just the debris, but also heartbreaking stories behind them. Curator Tadasuke tells of the story of the 40 cows left behind.
牛がお家を壊してしまったり畑を漁ったりするとその後の生活を取り戻すのに非常に時間がかかってしまうので繋いだまま避難せざるを得なかったんですね。で結果として食べるものがなかった牛たちはこの柱を編んでですね結果として全て餓死してしまったそうなんです。
A replica of a pillar in the barn showed the starving cows had tried to eat it. But life will likely never return to normal for many in Fukushima, even as the painful memories are being preserved here at this museum. Yaoemon Sato started his power company in 2013. It's a small outfit, but his business is growing. He's installed solar panels like these in over 80 spots, concentrated in Fukushima's inland area called the Aizu region. Not just solar energy, Yaoemon wants to tap into all kinds of energy sources, from wind to geothermal and water. His ultimate aim is to prove that Japan can survive without nuclear power.
ここは盆地で山国で周りから水がどんどん押し寄せています。これを発電するということで、実際にここは500万キロワット近い発電能力があります。水だけですよ。でその他に森林資源もこれもバイオマスを回せばで太陽光もやってものすごいエネルギーがここから電気を作ると思えばものすごくできる。
For over 2 centuries, the Sato family brewed sake for a living. To fully focus on his energy venture, Yaoemon handed over the family business to his son. The family brewery is now powered by renewable energy produced by his company. This is Mr. Yaoemon's brewery. It was founded in 1790, and he's proving right here that his solar power can be utilized Look at the light bulb here. It's generated by Aizu Electric. The new energy source was put to the test last month when a 7.3 magnitude quake, believed to be an aftershock from the 2011 quake, struck the region.
揺れたんですけど、影響自体はなかったんで、停電もなかったですし、はい。
The earthquake and nuclear crisis 10 years ago prompted the switch from sake to solar energy for Yaoemon.
もう全く安全安心絶対に大丈夫って言ってましたから、そうだよなって。だからあの地震の時も、私は絶対大丈夫だって安心しろと、こんな地震で原発は壊れないと言ってたら真っ赤な嘘でしたね。とんでもない。あんなにもろく、しかも1号機2号機3号機みんなメルトダウンしてまだ止まらない。もうコントロールできないんです、あの原発っていうあんな危険なものだとは思わなかった。
The nuclear crisis forced 1.6 million to evacuate. Thousands sought shelter in Aizu, which was considered a relatively safe haven for radioactive materials because of its location, about 100 kilometers away from the damaged nuclear plant. Many local business owners support Yaoemon's push to abandon nuclear energy. One of them, the owner of a 190-year-old lacquerware shop. He fled from Fukushima with his family.
原子力だけは絶対ダメだと思ってますし、で水力も会津はこのものすごい量が ありますからね。でこれから期待していきたいのは、私はむしろ火力って言っても天然の火力の地熱ですね。
But even with efforts from people like Yaoemon Sato, nuclear power is likely to remain a mainstay of the country's energy policy for many years to come. Japan's energy self-sufficiency rate is low. As of 2018, it's 12%. The country's energy plan, set in 2018 and due for revision in 2021, targets up to 24% of its energy to come from renewables by 2030, along with 20 to 22% from nuclear power and 56% from fossil fuels. Miyagi is another prefecture that faced the wrath of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. It's slowly picking up the pieces over the last decade, helped by a group of dedicated volunteers and foreign aid. It's a painful journey back to normalcy, if that is even possibly achievable. Consoling the souls lost to the massive natural disaster 10 years ago. Buddhist monks from Miyagi and Iwate came together to pray for the 20,000 victims in East Japan. Those in attendance rang the bell of hope and prayed. When the earthquake struck 10 years ago, Kaoru Terasawa was a civil servant with Shichigahama's welfare department. He is now the mayor of the town.
もう瓦礫とヘドロに覆われてて、もう惨状極まりない状況でございました。知り合いの皆さんがご遺体として本当に町の役場の方に皆さん運ばれてきたときに本当に何とも言えない気持ちでありました。
The tsunami swept over 36% of Shichigahama, as indicated by the area shaded blue on the map. At that time, frightened residents fled to a multi-purpose hall at the top of a hill, which became a temporary shelter. In the aftermath of the earthquake and tsunami, volunteers from across the country came to Shichigahama to help rebuild the area. 10 years on, some are still here. 38-year-old Yasuaki Kubota leads a volunteer group called the Seven Seas Project. He is the one who came up with the idea of conducting a memorial service on the beach to mark the anniversary.
2013年からですね、海と人との関係性をもう一度つなぐという思いでですね、ビーチフェスやビーチでのさまざまなその子どもたちのアート活動などもやってきたんですね。で年久に和尚と 次の3月11日どういうふうにしようか、やっぱり和尚さんたちができるのはあくまでも鎮魂、僧侶の皆さんが宗派も超えてですねやりたいというふうに言っていただいた。
Shichigahama was known as a surfer's paradise before the tsunami. There have been efforts to restore that reputation. A small resort hotel opened in 2016 with public and private funding. Management says the construction of the hotel has factored in disaster mitigation measures.
この下を、遮るものがないので、津波が来た時も逃がすんですね。はい、なので建物が流されるという心配がまずないです。で、さらに、上に展望台があるんですけども、こちらが、非常の避難所にもなってまして。
This rooftop is about 15 meters above sea level, so it's a few meters higher than the actual tsunami which hit the area.
And across the hotel, a tsunami gate will close in 2 minutes in the event of a tsunami warning. Slowly but surely, residents of Shichigahama are picking up the pieces of their lives. Hiroko Adachi was in charge of 1-year-olds at Toyama Nursery in Shichigahama when the massive earthquake struck 10 years ago.
子供たちがまだ寝てたので、布団を真ん中に全部15名ぐらいの布団を寄せ集めて、先生3人で覆いかぶさりました。自分も怖いんだけど、子供たちを安心させるように自分がちゃんとしっかりしなくちゃっていう思いで、
There were 98 children at the time. I was able to talk to one of them. Aoi Sakakibara was 4 years old then.
寝てて揺れとかあんまり覚えてないけど、先生たちに外に出てって言われて、それで外に出ました。何も分かんない状態で、みんな泣いてたり、先生もパニックになってるから、ちょっと怖いし、驚いてる感じがしました。
Her mother was at work at a nursing home. She could not come fetch her, as she had to make sure the elderly under her care were all right. A relative eventually picked up Aoi from the damaged nursery, but she could not go back home as their house was flooded by the tsunami. Meanwhile, oil tanks nearby exploded. Those huddled in the nursery had to be evacuated to a safer place. The town needed help to rebuild the vital facility.
シンガポールの海外からの支援もありますよということでお話がありまして、それで私がその時直接日本赤十字社の国際事業部、そしてシンガポールの方の関係者の皆様に電話をさせていただきました。そしたらぜひシンガポールからも支援をしたいというお話がありまして。
In 2012, an agreement was signed. About a year later, Toyama Nursery reopened and its playground was named Lion Park in honor of Singapore's aid. Shichigahama town produced a video to thank Singapore for its support. Mayor Terasawa says the Singapore connection has inspired the town to place more emphasis on English language education. Children from Toyama Nursery are proving that.
How are you? Good. What's the weather?
It's sunny. Thank you, Singapore.
Today, Aoi's younger sibling, born after the disaster, also attends the nursery.
同じところでね、やっぱり前と変わらずいい生活ができるってすごく幸せなこと。たくさんの人の支えとかがあって、そこにはやっぱりすごくいつまでもすごい大きな感謝。
Well, these kids have not experienced the 2011 tsunami and earthquake, but the teachers here feel that it's important that when they grow up, they learn about the experience the residents here went through.
As Shichigahama marks 10 years since the disaster, local authorities told me the town is ready to move on. For years, These photos and memorial tablets have been preserved and handled with the utmost care and respect. Each and every one of these photos were cleaned by volunteers, and they were found among tsunami debris. It's been 10 years since, but there are many people who have not taken back these photos to where they should belong. Local authorities said a respectful Buddhist ceremony will be held to incinerate photos that have not been claimed by anyone by the 10th anniversary.
Jakarta, a megalopolis that is home to some 10 million people, is frequently hit by floods in the rainy season. Last month, several areas in the Indonesian capital were inundated in water after heavy rains caused rivers to surge and overflow, forcing thousands to evacuate their homes. But flooding is also a serious problem facing residents living along Indonesia's coastal regions as tidal floods become more common due to rising sea levels.
Just an hour's boat ride away from bustling Jakarta lies Pari Island. It's one of more than 300 small islands north of the Indonesian capital. With its tranquil beaches and balmy breeze, it's long been an idyllic getaway from the busy city, drawing a steady stream of visitors from Jakarta. But climate change is threatening its very existence. The island was hit by a severe tidal flood in July last year, upending life on the island. Seawater rushed into homes near the coastline for days, clogging the doorsteps with debris from the ocean. Dede Yuningse had to evacuate her family from their home along the coast and take shelter at a relative's home further inland until the waters receded.
Saya kan sedih ngelihat orang tua saya yang lagi sakit. Nggak bisa jalan kan, saya sampai nangis, ya Allah, nggak biasanya banjir seperti ini. Saya ngungsi lagi, paginya saya lihat lagi keadaan rumah, di depan rumah kayu-kayu besar udah numpuk, sumur pun udah ketutupan sampah semua.
The well was her biggest concern. Seawater entered the well, contaminating the groundwater. Her family now has to bathe in salty well water and buy water for cooking and drinking.
Residents in Pari Island depend on water wells such as this one to access groundwater for everyday activities such as bathing and washing. When the tidal floods hit the island, water in the well was contaminated with seawater. Residents are unable to use the groundwater up until today.
A few months later, in November, another tidal flood hit. The residents of Pari Island have dealt with tidal floods before, but they were few and far between and far less severe. But environmental experts say these floods will come more frequently from now on because of rising seawater levels caused by climate change. Increasingly unpredictable weather has greatly affected the island's fishermen. Mustafirin has been fishing around the waters of Pari Island for more than 40 years. He said in the past it was easier to predict the weather. That's no longer the case.
Dulu itu tahun 90-an itu kalau untuk baby tuna itu kita satu hari bisa mendapatkan 100 sampai 200 kilo per satu hari. Karena alam waktu itu masih bisa kita prediksi. Bulan sekian alam musim barat, bulan sekian musim utara, bulan sekian musim timur. Kalau sekarang angin sudah dengan alam ini sudah tidak bisa kita prediksi lagi. Jadi hasil itu kan yang mempengaruhi penangkapan kita. Kalau di musimnya kita paling banyak juga 4 sampai 50 kilo kita.
Fishermen are now forced to venture beyond their usual fishing grounds, heading further out to sea in their small boats for their catch at great risk to themselves. The local government is stepping up efforts to help coastal communities, including fishermen who must brave the sea to make a living.
Jadi kita berikan mereka early warning system. Saat ini kami bekerja sama dengan pihak BMKG untuk memberikan informasi awal kejadian-kejadian yang dimungkinkan akan timbul di sekitar pesisir atau Pulau Seribu. Jadi misalnya gini Pak, pesisir dan Pulau Seribu itu kan banyak nelayan-nelayan yang sangat rentan. Jadi perlu kita informasikan kepada para masyarakat termasuk nelayan bahwa sebentar lagi akan ada kejadian angin besar, sebentar lagi akan ada kejadian ombak, sebentar lagi akan terjadi badai.
The COVID-19 pandemic has dealt fishermen a double whammy. Not only are they struggling with smaller hauls because of unpredictable weather patterns, they're also earning less thanks to COVID-19 curbs.
Pada COVID itu sulit, jual ikannya sulit di sini. Kita ke darat aja nggak boleh waktu kemarin-kemarin ini, Pak, bulan-bulan yang duluan itu. Iya, PSBB. Kalau orang ke darat itu nggak usah banyak-banyak, waktu itu satu RT 4 orang, 5 orang boleh ke darat. Jadi nggak semua gitu Pak. Karena ikan juga harganya jauh Pak, jauh beda waktu kemarin-kemarin ini. Yang dulunya harganya 25, paling 10.000.
Green activists have urged Pari Island residents to diversify their income to alleviate the impact of climate change.
Dalam konteks jangka pendek, cara coping, kami menyebutnya sebagai coping strateginya ya, itu ya mendiversifikasi pendapatan gitu. Masyarakat di sini tergantung pada pendapatan dari melaut ya, terus kemudian dari sektor pariwisata gitu. Maka harus diciptakan mendiversifikasi sumber pendapatan lain, misalnya dari berkebun, bercocok tanam ya, mengolah hasil tangkapan menjadi produk lain ya, misalnya ikan asin. Karena ketika sumber pendapatan mereka yang satu terganggu akibat perubahan iklim, mereka masih bisa mendapatkan sumber pendapatan dari yang lain.
The residents of Pari Island are aware of the perils of climate change and are fighting back. They've started constructing seawalls to cushion the impact of tidal floods. These 1-meter-high walls are built some 5 meters away from shore in areas considered most vulnerable to flooding. Residents are also using mangrove trees to complement the seawalls.
New mangrove trees are being planted to act as natural barriers to protect the coastline against future tidal floods. These young plants are only 3 years old and they need about 30 years to grow into adult mangrove trees.
The residents of Pari Island have a daunting task ahead of them. The consequences of climate change on small islands are alarming. Think tank Climate Central predicts that 80% of Pari Island may be underwater by 2050.
If the tidal floods occur more frequently or if the sea water level rises much higher, residents in Pari Island may need to move further inland to higher ground. Or much worse, they may even need to leave the island.
But Pari Island locals want to stay put.
Ya lahir di sini ya coba mati di sini. Apapun itu jadi kita nggak tahu ke depan kayak gimana. Sebenarnya kita berusaha pada hari ini untuk bisa menyelesaikan satu masalah. Apapun yang terjadi kita jaga. Ini ternak kelahiran.
Dede, whose life has yet to return to normal since the tidal floods last year, hopes to build a new home, one on higher stilts to better weather future floods. Till then, all she can do is brace herself and pray that the next flood that hits the shore will not be as severe as the last.